What's up, everybody? Welcome to yet another live stream. My name is Lewis, also known as MrCameraJunkie. Thank you for taking the time and spending it here with me on the Camera Junkie live stream. This is week number 84. There we go. Week number 84 consecutively of the Camera Junkie live stream. I hope you had a great week. Me, myself, it could have been better. A little bit under the weather, but wasn't going to stop me from being here for the live stream. So, as always, thank you for taking the time, and our time being our most valuable possession, or our most valuable commodity. Little foggy up in the head because of this, but we're going to work through it. If you have been following along, as for the past, I would say, month or so, we went from recording a live stream to then actually editing it, and gone through a couple of phases of editing. And last week we went through a lot of things. I was able to complete the edit, so all 40 minutes I already got it down to just a little bit over 4, and we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna watch that over and get into it right from there. So I'm just gonna play it at 2 times real quick so that you can see what we're dealing with, and then we're gonna go from there as far as the steps to editing with Final Cut Pro. Now, we went through the steps through Descript, creating XML files, and then bringing it to over to Final Cut Pro. And now that we're there, we were able to work through a lot of it and explain a lot of it last week. So if you would like, you can go back and check those. Those are still up and available. And today we're going to continue with the edit. So with that being said, as always, let me go ahead and see who's here in chat. All right. And right off the bat, we have Randy hanging out. How are you doing? He says, I have 2 large frappe mochas and I'm all wired up, ready to go. Let's do this. I love that. It's been a while I haven't had a frappe mocha, but I've been making my coffee here at the house. That's just me getting everything done here and not having to step out. But we also have Mr. Paul Duncan. It says, must be Saturday night. Thank you, sir. Thank you as always for hanging out here. John is also here saying happy that it's Saturday night. Hard to believe that it's already been a week. Yeah, it's been a really fast, interesting week. Hey, Gretchen is here as well saying hello. And Mr. Moderator always reminding, if you do have any questions, and please put a Q in front of it, because we're going to be going through the Final Cut Pro. So if you do have any questions, please make sure to leave them down there. Okay. All right. And we also have Kevin Cox here saying hello to all. And he's asking, does everyone hit, or has everyone remembered to hit the like button? And yes, if you haven't already, please do so. Please hit that like button. It goes a long way. Just punch it right there in the face. And then we'll just continue. And with that, we're going to move into the next scene, which I already have Final Cut Pro brought up into the editing scene. Okay. Actually, you know what? Before I'm going to show you, I'm going to show you a little bit behind the scenes. I'm going to show you my overhead shot, right? Because today I got everything going. I got 1, 2, 3, 4 monitors, and it's all working out pretty good. So far so good, but I wanted to show you that before we get into it. Now we're going into the editing scene. So hit this. We'll jump to there, and perfect. Boom. Like I planned it, right? All right. Okay, now that we're here, as you can see, you should be able to hear the audio coming out. Let me make sure nothing's muted. Okay, and if I were to press play, these types of cameras can... Yeah, all right, cool. So now let me just... Let's start at the beginning. Welcome to Ecamm from...
video, we went over downloading and installing Ecamm to your computer. And in this video, we will be connecting your camera. If you happen to be using Ecamm on a laptop, if this is the camera that you're going to use, then you're all set. And you can move on to the next step, installing your microphone. Mac laptops have webcams built in, but I highly recommend stepping up from the built-in webcam, especially when utilizing the power of Ecamm. The obvious upgrade from a built-in webcam is a dedicated webcam. There are various prices for various qualities of dedicated webcams, no matter which make or model you decide to use. This next step should be the same. First, position your webcam in the location best suited for your setup. Next, connect your webcam via USB to your computer. Ecamm should automatically detect your webcam and have it ready for use. Select it as your camera of choice and you're all set. Like I mentioned before, there are various prices and quality of webcams. An alternative to higher price webcams is to use your backup iPhone as a webcam. If you're anything like me, you might have a backup iPhone just laying around. There are various programs like Camo and Epoch Cam that give you access to your smartphone's camera. And instead of utilizing your day-to-day phone, you can use your backup iPhone. Both of the before mentioned programs require you to install the application on both your computer and your phone. This will allow your computer to recognize your phone as a webcam. And now with iOS 16,
I don't know if you noticed there, but there was like kind of a jarring jump cut. I think right here.
phone, you can use phone. Both of the before mentioned programs require you to install the application
right when
on
I
both your
say
computer and your
both,
phone. This will allow your computer to recognize your phone
that's
as a
something
webcam. And
that
now
I'll
with iOS 16
keep,
and macOS Ventura, you'll be able to utilize continuity cameras.
I'll put a pin on it.
Ecamm will automatically recognize all connected cameras. The next step up would be to connect a point and shoot camera. These types of cameras can also be connected via USB and give you a substantial upgrade in image quality. One thing they cannot do is distribute power through the same USB cable. Depending on how long you're planning to use your point and shoot camera with Ecamm, you might be looking into purchasing a dummy battery to keep your camera powered on indefinitely. Ecamm has the power to connect a variety of different point and shoot and older DSLR cameras via USB, allowing you to get a clean signal without the need of an external video capture card. In this new world of virtual events and Zoom calls, looking our best has little to do with our wardrobe. How you show up online says a lot on how people will remember you. One way to stand out is to have amazing image quality. Most modern cameras have software in them that allow you to connect them to your computer as a webcam. Some of the newest releases allow for video and power to be transferred via one USB-C cable. But to get the highest quality video, you will have to connect an external video capture card. In a nutshell, a video capture card converts your analog HDMI signal from your camera to your computer to be used via USB. Just like webcams, there are various prices and quality in video capture cards. Start by connecting the appropriate HDMI cable to your camera. At the other end is where you will connect your HDMI capture card. Next, you will connect your USB capture card to your computer. And once again, Ecamm is making everything easy by automatically detecting your capture card as your camera source. Note, just like the point and shoot cameras, a dummy battery may be required. Some camera brands allow you to power up your camera via USB while using the HDMI. This prevents the need to have to purchase a dummy battery, allowing you to keep your camera charged during use. Now that you have successfully connected your camera with Ecamm, the next step is to get high quality audio. Like I always say, bad audio is unwatchable. In the next video, I show you how to connect TRS, TRRS, USB, and XLR microphones. Click the link and I'll see you there.
Okay. In my opinion, I only saw like one or two real instances that I would say I would definitely make sure. You got it? Yeah, he's got it. Okay, there was just about two instances that I would make sure that I would want to cover over with B-roll, just because I think that the cuts themselves are jarring, but the audio is good. So with that aspect, I always made sure that the audio is good, and that's the main thing. That's why I said I would just put a pin in it when it came to that aspect of that butt. And you know, that's as something as simple as that. As we're looking at it on the timeline, I'll just add a marker for it. I know that the only marker is pretty much the one area that I want to keep a tab on that. So with the audio being good, right now with the new version of Final Cut Pro, they have a thing called voice isolation. So any audio that would be in the background was already eliminated, and I already applied this by just simply clicking this little check mark here in the audio enhancements that's built into Final Cut Pro already there. So that's something that is new with the latest update. I think it was 10.6.2, and it really works well. So with that being said, if you have something in the background and this were to be your audio, then you would be moving on to the next step with this. Oh, you guys are hearing Aiden with the sound effects? Yeah. All right, let me see what's going on in the chat real quick before I continue. Says Kevin's watching from the living room. Says is on the as we rearrange and organize. That's cool. Gretchen says Saturday Night Shenanigans with MCJ. And Scott stopped by as well. He's here saying hello to the crew. We have Carlos saying hello to everyone. And Gretchen saying that Aiden is adding the Foley, the sound effects. Yes, he is. All right. And real quick, let's just go to that to give you a quick glimpse at the Aiden cam as it looks like he's gnawing on his toes. Come on, buddy. All right, so let's go back to, nope, that's not it. This is it. There we go. Boom. All right. Now let me click on Final Cut so that I can get my shortcuts. Perfect. Okay. Let me move this. No. I don't know if that'll show. Shouldn't, right? Okay, perfect. All right. So now, like I had mentioned just before, if this is where you're at and you don't do any audio processing, you can move on to the next step as far as B-roll, but I do. And when it comes to audio processing, it's more audio leveling. So we would be wanting to level. So as you can see on the timeline, you know, underneath, you see the audio waveform going up and down, and that's natural because that's how it works. But when we're doing these videos, or at least I am for my edits, I want to make sure that they're leveled. This also is really important when it comes to doing a podcast. So let's say you were editing a podcast, whether it be video or audio, you can have two completely different sound levels when it comes to the two individuals in said podcast. So let's say you were able to record those two, you're still able to get them, put them into your editor, and then apply the process that we're going to go through right now to show you. Reverse it. I'm going to show you the process that we're going to do right now to actually level those audio files together. So no matter what it is. And in my instance, when it comes to the music that I add on, I like to level that down completely different, so I make sure that it's not part of the mix when I'm doing it at this point. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna head to the upper right hand corner of Final Cut Pro, and I'm gonna click on like this little export window. This gives me the options to export the video in its entirety in various different formats, but then also I have preset a file to just extract the audio, or an export kind of like shortcut. So right there I'm able to just click audio on this, and what it's going to pull from my timeline is no video but just the audio file, and at this moment is just me speaking. There's no added, you know, Foley besides Aiden, and I have the voice isolation that I have already applied so that it blocks out the background noise, because what I'm doing here is I'm leveling my voice for this track. Okay, and as you can see, it's a WAV file and it's at 75.8 megabytes, and we're gonna click next, and it's gonna throw it into the same hard drive that actually, that's my Hagibis drive. We've been using the SSK. That's where we're running everything from. So this is my secondary SSD. And yes, okay. Good thing, and I'm gonna mention it right now as I'm gonna check the chat. Good thing that we're only gonna be exporting audio today, you know, just because of time constraints. And right now, this file, 100 times out of 100 times, like 100%, if I were not to be streaming, this audio file will already be done. We're still waiting for it to extract. As you can see, like probably just above my head, the little circle up here, right? We're waiting for that file to render out. This is an audio file. This takes no time. On my Mac Mini or on this one, I kind of noticed that the computer was acting a little sluggish because I'm asking it to do everything, and I didn't restart it before the live stream. But like I said, good thing that we don't have to wait on that aspect. Okay, let me go grab this file now. Okay, boom. And I'm just gonna pull my, there we go, boop. And it's selected there. As you can see, a lot of other files from different projects. This is exactly how I do this process. So now that that file's there, we are going to go to the internet. Actually, you know what? Let me do this because there's two ways of audio leveling. The way that I do it is through an online website called Alphonic. Alphonic gives you 2 hours for free every month of audio processing. So this file that's just over 4 minutes will get rounded up and be considered a 5-minute edit. And that's how much of the 2 hours of processing power that I have monthly with Alphonic for free, I'll be able to do. Another free program that's available with Mac computers, and Doc Rock recently just mentioned this one to me, is called Levelator. And that one also does the same exact thing as far as leveling your audio. Now, in my opinion, the Alphonic sounds better, right? And I guess just being, someone who's working more and more with audio files, I can tell the difference. But it's not like Levelator is that far off. So let's start with that program to show you how simple it is. You can go to the App Store and download Levelator. And I'm gonna just launch it. And bring it on screen. And this is what the application looks like. Oh, I put it right over my head. Ooh, come on. All right, so Levelator is just a simple application, as you can see, and it's just sitting there waiting for you to drop the files. And that's how easy this program is. You were to drop it in there, it's asking you where you want it, and it just gives you the same exact file name and then says leveled. And then you hit save, and it's gonna save it, and you can see how fast it's doing the entire processing. Does not take long. That's usually about how long Final Cut takes to export the file, but I digress. And now Levelator is done. That's a very simple way, and you can see that the file size didn't change much. Yet if I were to bring this file into the timeline, we're gonna wait for it to render up there. It took everything that was low and brought it way up. As you can see, all the peaks are in the yellow, but it never goes into the red. So it effectively, through this process, isolated my audio, my voice, through the extraction or through the process of Final Cut Pro. And now with Levelator, I was able to bring those levels to the correct height. And the step that I would take right now, because I have the fixed audio, would be to highlight all of these on top, go right up to my inspector over here on the upper right, and usually the inspector would be here, so that's why I just clicked it there to show you. So if you are in any other step, once you have all the files highlighted, you will select the speaker, and the speaker will give you the volume and everything like that. The volume is the decibels, and all of the files that I selected, I am now going to just bring down to 0, because we're not going to be using that audio anymore. We're using the audio that's now laid underneath, and because it came from the same exact file, everything will line up perfectly. And when we listen to it, should be a little louder. I'm going to bring it down. It will now be leveled. Welcome to Ecamm from scratch. In the first video, we went over downloading and installing Ecamm to your computer. And in this video, we will be connecting, and that's how we level the audio. Now with this, we're able to move on to the next step, which is where I would actually be checking all of these little clips, and how I had mentioned previously about the J and the L cuts. This is where it becomes like really easy to apply a J cut or an L cut, because of the simple reason that we can just highlight into any portion, and we can visually see the gap in the audio that lines up with the cut of the video that's sitting above it. So right here, let me make sure, yeah. right here, we can see the cut in the video and the space in the audio. But the audio now is just one single file. I mean, yeah, one single audio file. So there's no cuts because we were happy with the way the audio sounded. That's why we moved on to the next step of, you know, processing that audio. Excuse me. Okay. Okay, so right there we're at the point where we can tell where the cuts are. If we were to apply snapping, like I had mentioned before, with snapping, the playhead will snap to all these sections. So once it snaps to a cut section, we will see where it aligns with the audio. This is where we can apply the trick that I mentioned last week as well, which is to hit the letter T. And once you hit the letter T, your cursor changes to this transition. This gives you the power to do two things, okay? It allows you to scoot the file, or is it like shift the file? So this will only be useful if your voice, like your audio, and your mouth is off sync and you want to make them in sync. You have the ability to click on any file, and as you have it clicked on selected, you see how it opened up both windows? It's showing me the in and out points of this file. But as you can see here, while I have my finger pressed down on the click and have it selected, I am able to move the files beginning and end, okay, and how it reacts. Because it's separate from the audio will never change. So if the audio were to be off sync, this will be an easy way to allow you to synchronize your lips with the audio that you found to be correct or to be good. This is one of the ways that you're able to do that. You see, I moved it 6 frames forward. So now when we were to play this, I'm going to be 6 frames off sync in my voice. This is the camera that you're going to use. See, at that same moment, I'm able to do that in reverse and bring it back 6 frames, not 6 seconds. I apologize. 6 frames. And once I brought back the 6 frames that you're going to use, then you're all. You see that we have perfect sync with the audio and the lips. But at the same moment with this T transition, right, the T transition tool, you're able to modify that to see when each file begins and ends. And what it does is that you're not changing the size of your actual video timeline so that it stays synchronized with the audio file that we just dropped in underneath. So this will allow for a simple cut, you know, or transition change, and just that simple, something like that will then change the file, and now we have an official, this is a J cut cam on a laptop. If this is the camera that you would hear, see the this isn't a great example, but a good time to utilize these types of transitions. Let me just return that to where, you know, to where it was. A good time to use this transition is when there are certain words that also need to be enunciated, but you also want to cut to the next clip. So for example, like the breathy words like the, you know, there's so many examples and I'm running a blank on it right now, but there are so many words that, like, I think would have like an S. Like, yeah, here's a good example. Like, instead of saying camera, cameras, right? That aspect of any word really falls off when it comes to the audio spectrum. So these are things that you have to be paying attention to so that you don't cut those words out. And if you don't like the way that the visual cut looks comparative to the way that the word sounds, that's when you would actually drop the audio. That kind of got loud. That's when you would actually drop the audio, right, as a separate file and start manipulating it with a J cut for the reason that you would want the next word to actually start, right? To actually keep it congruent, even though you're allowing the S to still roll off underneath. Hopefully that makes sense. Because I know that I could also get a bit techie and I can just run off on a rant. So I just want to make sure that, like everybody's on the bus when I'm on these rides. Okay, let me check to see if you guys have any questions. Okay, we got Alberto here saying hello. He says, question, did you edit first on Descript, then the Final Cut Pro? Yes, that's exactly what I did. I started in Descript and I applied a lot of edits that were not baked in. So they're not destructive when it comes to the terminology. That means that even though we did some editing in Descript, we were able to bring all of those edits into Final Cut Pro to finalize them because they were never made final in Descript. Okay, Mr. Paul Duncan already put the links for Alphonic. I like Alphonic. Let me know if that's something that you want me to demonstrate. But I think it's pretty much straightforward. Everything will just be like the types of files that you want to use with Alphonic. But Alphonic, it works really well. I've been using it before I downloaded the program Levelator, and I don't know, maybe that's the reason why I prefer it, but I kind of like the sound of Alphonic. But as you can tell, this sounds just as good. It's not bad at all. And yes, Paul is also saying that Alphonic has a desktop app for a one-time fee of $89, and that will give you unlimited. And that's something that I was able to take advantage of because there's lots of files that I need to do audio for. But here's a tip. Here's a pro tip that if you are using the free version of it, right? When I first took this file to edit, it was 40 minutes, right? You can take that 40-minute file and drop it into Alphonic, and it will process 40 minutes of that and kick it back to you, taken care of. But the way that I do it is that I chop it up first so that then I only extract a 4-5 minute file, and then that's all that the audio processing is being done through Alphonic. So I maximize my 2 hours of Alphonic by not just telling it to process things that I know I'm not going to use if it's going to end up on the cutting room floor, right? Cutting room floor. Words, they're a bit hard today. Says John says, does Levelator have any advantages over Final Cut Pro limiter? It's not a limiter, it's a leveler. Because you see, the limiter is only going to take the peaks, but then the valleys are going to go very, very low. So if for whatever reason, like just right now, I kind of rocked backwards, right, on this microphone. And if my levels were to dip just a little bit, that will be picked up on a microphone. And that will be representative to the lows within the track. So with the Levelator or Alphonic, it's leveling everything. And like I said, if you're doing something by yourself and you got good audio, it's not so much, but I really recommend it for when you're editing more than one person's voice, whether it's an interview, a broadcast, anything of that aspect, because if anyone just happens to speak low, even though the levels are correct, you're still able to take that and bring it up to the same, 16 LUFS, negative 16 LUFS, which would be the standard kind of for podcasting. I think podcasting is negative 14, but regardless, I digress. And that's what I would say for those aspects. That's where I really, really recommend using a leveler for that reason. Makes everyone's audio, because this is the whole thing. The reason why we put so much emphasis on the leveler is because of what it actually is doing. Like, have you ever been in a radio or listening to the radio in your car and you have it set at a volume, but then an announcement comes out and the volume is way, way too high, that then you're like, oh, I have to stop concentrating on the road and put down the volume, and then as soon as the programming comes back on, you have to crank it back up. That's what the Levelator or leveler does. It prevents all that aspect so that you don't have to like raise or lower the volume when you're listening to an interview or anything like that when you're doing the edit on the post side. Okay. Okay, Mr. Duncan is saying that he also uses Alphonic. Okay, so let's continue. Right now, at this point, what we would be doing is adding B-roll. And speaking that this is about Ecamm, I don't think I shot this B-roll yet. Oh, I think I shot the wrong B-roll. I think I did. Okay. Okay, so we're just gonna pretend, so to speak, that I shot B-roll, and we're gonna roll with it as if we already have the files in place. Okay. Any B-roll, for those who are unfamiliar with the term, is supplementary footage that we would be putting in top or in place of my A-roll. So like I had mentioned before, and let me just bring this here. Okay. That I had put this marker here around like the 1 minute 25-second mark. And right there is a section that like has an abrupt aspect, and I know that I would want to make sure to put some B-roll on top of this. So now, if the B-roll wasn't particular to Ecamm, right, which I didn't shoot, so my bad. Let's say the topic of the video had nothing to do with Ecamm and it was something else completely different. I find myself using Envato elements to get B-roll. So let me go ahead and do that right now. Perfect. Okay, and now let me just bring this over here. Boop, boop. Okay, and now we're here in Envato. And to use it is very simple. This is a website that has a variety of stock footage, LUTs, transitions, a variety of different things, and you can select them particular to the editing program of your choice. They have add-ons or plugins for a variety of different programs. I use Final Cut Pro as I'm demonstrating here, but this is also could be used with, I believe, DaVinci Resolve and Adobe Premiere. This is because you can find like graphic templates, like the add-ons, a variety of different things. What I go is basically the main thing, stock video. And then here I would, let me just put person using computer. All right, and now we have our footage. Simple as that. So now we can sift through this, and I believe just by hovering over it, you can see pretty much the file that you'd be getting. So you see, that's not a bad file of somebody using a computer. So if that was my file of choice, or this photographer guy thinking, very interesting with the slow motion, let's say that's the one that I pick. Either or, you were to click here and just download it through Envato. This is a paid aspect, so you would be downloading. You can select and be applying your project so that it's all licensed accordingly. But to tell you the truth, I just download it without license because of the simple reason that I'm not even sure if it's gonna make it into my video when I'm usually like downloading stock footage that way. I'm usually putting something pretty broad and I want to see what's available, and you use what you have as far as like, what's the resources that are available to you. So now that we've downloaded that, we should be able to open it. It opened over here, which is not what I wanted it to do. But it's in my downloads folder. So now with that, I'm going to go ahead and minimize this. And now I'll be able to grab that file and just throw it right on top of my timeline. We're just gonna wait for it to process, or is it done already? Okay, and you see, as we had set my marker, I wanted to make sure that we had B-roll over that part. This is the definition of B-roll. A piece of footage that then goes on top of your roll that will then supplement it. What I do is that I don't like, if I am adding B-roll, I don't want to add it with the same jump cut, right? The same hard cut that I wanted to remove in the first place. So for this instance, I am going to cut this file down to size. I'm turning off snapping right over here once again, which is kind of like the magnetic aspect of it, of just the playhead. This is just so that I can move the files in between and be more granular with where I want it to begin and end without the cursor pulling on it. And I'm clicking that off now because we don't need to hear the file unless I'm playing it. We don't need to hear the audio while we're scrubbing. And now this is what it would look like, you know, as far as B-roll. You have the talking head portion of me speaking and then a cut directly into it. And the same way, I can just drag this a little bit to shrink the file. And you see, like, okay, I like the size of the file now, but I actually wanted to start there, not there, right? So that I could finish further. Once again, we can go to that T tool and just, now that we have it selected, just slide the file over and you can see that it reached the red, meaning that that was the end. I couldn't scoot to the left anymore because that was the end of the actual file. But I'm gonna clip just a little bit into it, okay, a couple of frames, and that's it. So now when we were to play,
and instead of utilizing your day-to-day phone, you can use your backup iPhone. Both of the before mentioned programs require you to install.
Okay, and that's an effective piece of B-roll. Like I was trying to mention, which I think I might have almost forgot, which was when I make these jump cuts that when I'm putting a piece of B-roll that I'm actually trying to eliminate a jump cut, I want to soften that transition from going in and out. And the easiest transition that I use here, that's stock. You don't need any other plugin. You can get fancier with it with these same like download plugin packs. That is an option. But at the same time, something that you can find is right here within the timeline. So if you see my playhead, we're going to go right over here, and this is your effects or your transitions. You would click that, and right on top is cross dissolve. I don't know if it's set as my default or my favorite. That's why it's up there. But if not, down here at the bottom, you have an option to search. So if you're looking for a particular effect within Final Cut Pro, this is where you'll be able to like search for it. Actually, these are the transitions, the little twisted thing. That's all the transition symbol. This is actually the effects. So if you want to do like 50s TV effect, anything like that you would like to apply, right? It's giving you the preview of what that would look like. You see like 50s black and white. So if I wanted to apply that to this clip, it's as simple as grabbing it and applying it to the clip itself, and now that clip is affected in the same way. But let me reverse that to show you something else that can be done, because if for any reason you have that clip highlighted as it is right now, all you would have to do on this end is actually double click the transition or the effect that you want applied, and it will then be applied to whatever's highlighted. So that's another added like time saving convenience of Final Cut Pro. And I mentioned that because we will be doing the same thing. I'm going to take the 50s black and white off, but I'm going to go back to the transition side. There we go, right? Okay. And because it's highlighted, I'm just going to double click cross dissolve, and it's going to add cross dissolve at the beginning and at the end of that clip that's said B-roll. So I'm gonna click into here, and I'm going to, like Doc says, embiggen. And this is just me zooming in on the timeline. This is just to expand the point of where it begins, where it ends, and how it begins and how it ends. And because everything is as simple as just like kind of adjust, click, and slide within Final Cut Pro, it makes things a lot easier. So if we were to just play this here on
your
out,
day-to-day phone,
you see how long the transition took to go from one scene to the B-roll. I'm gonna play it again.
your day-to-day phone,
You see that long transition, and that's the space or the size of this gray section that we're seeing here. So if I wanted that to be quicker or slower, it's as simple as selecting the edge and dragging it to your desired length. I think it was too slow, so I want to quicken that up, so I will shrink it up. And now
instead
when
of
it goes
utilizing
to do
your
that,
day-to-day phone, you
we
can
have a much faster transition between the A roll and the B roll, and it's smooth in. Then the back, kind of, you can leave it drag
require
out
you
just
to
because
install
it's
the application on.
but even there, that's still, like, for my taste, I think that's still too long. So I will probably just have it around the same size coming in and out of
And
that file.
instead of utilizing your day-to-day phone, you can use your backup iPhone. Both of the before mentioned programs require you to install the application on both.
And that is a successful piece of B-roll added to the file. I'm going to show the entire timeline here. Oh, let me close the transition, because when you hit the shortcut Shift Z is going to make the timeline the size of your screen so that you can see everything that's happening. But as you can see, it's kind of like too tall at the moment. Like I had mentioned in the previous live stream, we're going to come right here and we're going to just kind of shrink that down so that we can have a better view of what's going on in the timeline. Once again, Shift Z, and that brings the timeline in a good size so we can see it. And this is standard A-roll, B-roll footage on top. Now, the next step that I would take in an edit after I've added the B-roll, smoothened it out, is what we call the lower thirds, the call to actions, and all the little tidbits, you know, special like visual effects, or they're also considered to be called running a blank on it right now. So it's basically like, what is it? It's almost like a transition effect, but I digress. I can't remember the word that I'm trying to think of right now. Pattern interrupts. Man, as soon as I give up, it's like when it says, your brain goes, hey, isn't this the word you were looking for? Like, yep. So it's another way of having like a pattern interrupt in this aspect that you can use with all of these things. So whether it's the visual effects, the lower thirds, the call to actions, or pattern interrupts, they're all basically the same thing. Another quick tip that I want to mention right now, as you can see, there's no movement besides me speaking in all of these, you know, talking headshots. But if there was, like, for instance, another way that you could transition, but if you wanted to emphasize on what you were saying, but you didn't want to cover it up with a piece of B-roll, another way that we can do it, right? And let me just take this, right? And I'm going to move this to another section over here, and I say, you know what? I'm going to cover those edits with that file. Another thing that can be done here, because I know it's a bit jarring, is actually take the same file, right, the same piece of the video file that we were using, and right within the inspector, right over here in the upper right hand corner, we're going to go into this little film strip aspect, which gives us the scaling proportions of the file that we're looking at. So because we have this one file selected, we can see that the scale, or the scale all, is set to 100 right here. So what I have the ability to do is actually just crank this up by maybe 2, 3, Okay, so now we're at 103%. It actively works like a zoom in and out. So now when we were to play this file, as you can see, it goes from static to just popping in a little bit when you want to say something of emphasis, right? Just a quick zoom in, right? That's a simple way that you could be done without having the use of a transition. But now, if you want to do it another way, like through a transition pack, I'm going to show you how we do that just the same way. So note that just simple scaling will allow you to get an effect of, as you can see, of just like kind of like zooming in and back out. That can be used as what we were just saying, the pattern interrupts, to keep the the intrigue in the video. But another way of doing it is by using said plugins. So now, with that being said, we're gonna go, let me make sure that we can see it. Yeah, okay, you can see my mouse cursor above my head here. And where we're going to is that we can see that we have this little, I forgot the name of that thing. Anyways, this is where we see our libraries, and we're going to be moving over to our titles generators. So we're going to click into this aspect, which is going to take us to this menu here. Let me enlarge that a bit, right? So anything that we have selected here will be represented in the box to the just next to it. What just happened? That shouldn't have happened. Okay. And these are the generators. These are pretty much all like the solids. That's part of Final Cut Pro. So if you wanted to use like just a different color, like you can just add that on top, and that would be that, so to speak. This is mostly used for like a background. So let's say you wanted to add text onto your screen and let that be your B-roll. You also have the ability to generate text and just have that as a, something that gets placed on top of it. As you can see, you have multiple colors. I mostly use black just as a background, but I'm going to remove that. That's unnecessary. And we're going to drop down this titles category because I have quite a few. As you can see, I have downloaded quite a few plugins for Final Cut because I use it. One that's actually free, okay, is this MRig. And that's the one that I'm going to show you. That's very cool for zooming in. So we want to have that zoom in effect that we just applied through the scaling, and we're going to just apply it by bringing in MCameraJunkie and dropping it onto our timeline. That's how simple that is. Because you see, there's added effects to this that you're going to have extended control within the same inspector up there. So let me go ahead and show you. As you can see, look at the zoom that we have here. So that's the zoom that we just applied. So if you wanted to check out my mouth in HD, that's exactly what happens. But this is what we're going to do. We have it selected, right? That MCameraJunkie that we just dropped in, but we can see that that zoom is way too extreme. So we're going to go here to the like text and titles option, right? What does it say? Title inspector. Okay. The inspector, but for the title that we just dropped on. And we're going to see that it's saying the scaling is -400. So it's basically like zooming in 400. We think that's way too much. But in this particular, I'm just going to zoom into 150. Okay. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to change it effectively to -150. Okay. But if we were to just leave that on this plugin, look at what happens. It creates like a bokeh effect because it's out of focus. But as you can see, the zooming in aspect is a lot more manageable. Okay, the reason why is because this gives you all the parameters. So you would actually have to match what's here in the inspector, your focus offset, that as you can see is numbered exactly the same as -400, and you will put it to the same -150. So now your focus and your zoom are matching in parallel. Okay, and now when we go to it, it's gonna zoom out, but it's gonna zoom in. I mean, it's going, my words are tangling. We're gonna zoom in, and now it's in focus because we set the parameters correct. But I don't like the framing. I don't like exactly where it's at because it's cutting my head off, and that's not a good look. But that's when we would go right here to that same spot. Oh, let me make sure that the playhead's in front of it so that we can see what it's doing, right? And we see the dot. We're just gonna click right on it and we're gonna adjust it. We can move it to any aspect of the shot in particular. So I would just line it up to where I want. If I want it to be, you know, like a little offset, right, I can just throw it there as well and then let go, and we're done. So now if we were to play this section with this on it,
of choice, and you're all set. Like I mentioned before, there are various prices and quality of webcams. An alternative to higher price webcams is,
and zoom back out. As you can tell, the difference that is not as jarry as the zoom that I had mentioned before by just scaling up and down. That's the effectiveness of a jump cut. But if a jump cut is necessary in that aspect, don't hesitate to use that scaling aspect because it does go a long way. But there's a lot of parameters that can be changed because this can be easily stretched out over all of these, and now it will zoom in to this section throughout all of those clips that it corresponds, because the way that all NLE, you know, the all editors pretty much are going to work the same way. That the way that you see the file stacked from top to bottom is the way that you would actually visualize them. So anything that you put on top will affect everything or cover everything underneath it. So that's a simple way to add a zoom. But within these same plugins is where you would find a variety of different plugins as far as transitions, but also like this aspect that says clean lower thirds. Excuse me. So lower thirds is something that we would want to start with maybe. So let's just, for example, go to the beginning of the video when someone maybe just first clicked on it. We would want to introduce ourselves, but when we press play,
welcome to Ecamm from scratch. In the first video,
I don't really mention myself, don't talk about it, which is kind of my style, right? So that I give the purpose for the lower thirds. So I'm going to go ahead and start at the beginning once again. Lower thirds. This is a cool feature. We're able to select the options, and the same way that we can play the timeline. Now we've moved the player's attention away from the file that we're editing, and we put it onto the file that we want to apply now. And this is the same for all of these options. So I'm just gonna hit play, and you're gonna see that it's just gonna play how it's going to look, and it's just gonna loop that aspect so that I can see, is that the style that I wanted? And if it isn't, I'm able to just press down on my keyboard and go to the next one to take a look at what is the desired effect. Now, the background that you're seeing here is basically generic. It is Final Cut Pro's way of saying all you're gonna see is the text on screen. Everything else behind it is what you choose. So this will just be like a transparent moving text on your screen. So you would go around and you would just select to see like, oh, which one do I want to apply? It says create your own style. The reason why it says create your own style is because we're just selecting the animation and the way it looks. What it says, that's completely up to us once we continue editing within the inspector. But we're just looking for lower thirds. So look at that one. Look, Kyle Wade photographer, right? That one's cool. So let's say, hey, I'm a photographer. That's the one that I'm going to use. I'm just going to grab it from here and I'm going to apply it right to the front, and it's there as lower thirds. So now when I were to hit play,
welcome to Ecamm from scratch.
Okay, we see that there. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to mute this, and A shortcut key on the keyboard in Final Cut Pro is the letter V. You would just hit V and it disables it. It kind of like effectively shuts off any file that you have it on there. You want to turn it back on, hit the same key. So I hit the key V. So now we are able to look at all of these without listening to the audio because we already know that that's fine. So now we see the Kyle Wade photographer, and it's on the right hand side of the lower third. Okay, if we want to make it longer, all we have to do is stretch it out. Hopefully you're able to see that. Yeah, I'm not blocking the timeline, but I could make it bigger. There we go. So now let's say I wanted to extend over the first 2 clips, right, and then fade out there. So we were to hit play and we see like, okay, that looks good, as speaking about like the introduction to the video, and then it's just gonna fade away. But I think it's really hard to be seen right there. So we're gonna just go back to it, click on the timeline just so that it's visible, and we're gonna select it, and we just go right back. And this is the ease of Final Cut Pro. We just go right back to the viewer. So where you're actually seeing it, you see the option to manipulate it right there. So this allows you to move it anywhere you like. And I go, okay, right there, that contrasting against my black shirt already looks a lot better than where it was placed originally. But I also still think it's a little bit small. See that option? We're able to click and drag, and now we made this bigger. But there's a problem here. The problem is my name's not Kyle. And you can see the inspector, Kyle Wade, is pretty much highlighted right there. You're able to just take that, and I will just do MrCameraJunkie. Oh man, that's my name, but now it doesn't fit. Everything is figure outable, how Doc says throughout this. So as you can see, the aspect that we can't fit is the name within the purple block. So now we can see the color purple here. It's the rectangle, which is what we're speaking about. It's hidden in there, and we have size, and we're just gonna change the size. Whoa, look at that. We just extended that a little bit. We're gonna make it a little bit taller. Perfect. But now we can see that we're also a little bit off axis. This says photographer. You know what? It looks kind of small now. Let's make that a little bit bigger just by sliding that as well. Boom. There we go. MrCameraJunkie, photographer. And now let's pick the appropriate size. That looks cool. If we want to rotate, we're able to select this and adjust parameters on the fly as such, and be like, you know what? That looks good right there. Scoot it off to the side. Now we're going to start the playhead once again, and we're going to see what the animation looks like. MrCameraJunkie, photographer. That's great. And now when we're done, we scoot out and it disappears. As simple as that with the plugin. So now we show you B-roll. We show you a couple of plugins, right? We show you how to zoom in and out, whether it's through, you know, like a plugin or through the inspector. We also added a lower third at the beginning. Let's say we have this whole aspect complete now. So, you know, in hypotheticals, the entire edit is full of your B-roll, is full of your lower thirds, your ins and outs. What would be the next step? Well, we have the audio mastered. My next step would actually be to mute the audio track, that just like we have it right now. So after I would add the lower thirds, right, this file, if it were to have been turned on, I would be turning that off at this point. The reason why is because now I just want to see all of the effects that I have applied. So I would go through the edit and see, okay, I have that there, I have that here, I have, you know, zoom in and out, B-roll, so on and so forth. And if the B-roll is something that is substantial enough that deserves what we mentioned before, Foley, you know, like special effects, special sound effects, then I would make sure to apply that. That's why I would cut the audio off so I won't distract myself, and make sure that I'm putting sound for every aspect of, you know, like any visuals that is going to be on the screen. So meaning that I have a lower third, the next aspect that I'd be doing is going to my epidemic sound. I use epidemic sound, but there's a variety of different audio hosting platforms. Use your favorite. You know, all my music, all my sound effects and everything like that is done through epidemic sound. So luckily for me, I already have quite a few files that I've downloaded previously, just because I have a huge file. And that's the whole thing. Like when it comes to the audio sound effects, do your best to organize them when you download them. That's just another tip. And keep them in a folder so that you don't have to constantly be going back to look for them, especially if you find a particular sound that you like and you kind of have taken it as your sound. Make sure that you have that organized correctly. Okay, so I'm gonna open up my drive here, and I'm going to go to, if I find it, because now I don't see it, but it wasn't that one. There we go. Epidemic sound effects. Okay, boom. And as you can see, I have a folder here with a variety of different sound effects. Like I said, did my best to organize them. These that say folder here, between you and me, I made those sound effects. They're good, right? But they were made on a Zoom recorder, and they're not, like, I have to listen to them so that I can label them, and I haven't done them. That's why I only did folder 1, and I haven't gotten around to folder 2. Okay, but this is where I wanted to get to, the whoosh folder. As you can see, I have a variety of my favorite whooshes and swooshes sound effects, and this is where I would go through them and I would go ahead and give it a listen. So I would just hit space bar, and that's what that sounds like. So let's say that's what the one that I wanted to use, right? After, you know, you take your time. I also say try it, right? If you think, hey, that could fit, try it, because it might not be the sound that you want, but it just might. And you never know until you throw it on the timeline. So just like everything else with Final Cut Pro, we will literally just throw this onto the timeline, because it's, well, it should have been a sound effects file, but regardless, it's in there. And now, let me embiggen that a bit. I'm going to take this and I'm going to drag it to the front of where we start. So now when the video starts, okay, so you see, like, even though I chose it, I think that that sound effects is just a little bit too short for the effect and the length of, like, the effect as it's coming in. So the way that I see it, there, I'm going to put a marker, which is, that's not where I wanted it to be. That's the marker, but that's where actually the sound needs to end. So there's various ways that you can do this. You could actually look for a completely different file, right? And then drop it in there and be like, that one sounds better. Or if you have something that you like, but you're like, I just want to extend it, this is another option that you can do. You can go right here, and by having the file selected under me, we're going to go to this little aspect here in the viewer, which kind of looks like a tachometer. And it's the retiming tool. And what you're going to do is that you're going to slow it down. And let's slow it down by 50%. And now I just took that same audio file and just made it twice as long, because I slowed it down, and because it's audio, it's not something that, as far as frame rates, you would actually notice with your eye. So we will hit play on this by starting the playhead at the beginning. And now I feel it's too extended. So twice as long wasn't good. I'm able to click on this. Let me, hopefully we can see that. Just underneath me, I'm able to see where it says slow 50% on the file here. Oh, you can't because I have the, let me see if I can take it off. Okay, that's what I was trying to show you there. All right, so there you can see that it says slow 50% because that's what we applied, but you know what? I don't want it 50%, so we're gonna hit custom and we're gonna go here and we're gonna do 80%, or you know what, 75. That means we've technically only slowed it down by 25%, not by 50 or double. Okay, and from where the sound, oh, give me back my mouse, from where the sound is at and the marker that I had put there, let's see if that holds up. See, that wasn't too bad. But these are different options, and this would be the next step. So now, after I've added sound effects to my visual effects, the next step for me would be to find music. So just like before, Epidemic Sound is where I get my music, and the same way that I would have that folder, let me get into it, right? I have my Epidemic files. As you can see, they were in a separate folder, and these are just files that I know that are part of my favorites. A lot of time, the way that I select the file has to do with the length of the video, because I already kind of like pre-selected a lot of this music, so it's only gonna be what I call a music bed, just literally leveling off like the lowest rumblings of the audio or the noise floor, and just to have that as just like a nice subtle, you know, jamming like I do on my live streams, just nice and subtle music as the music bed. So the way that I do it is I select the size and organize them by size, because obviously the biggest files are going to be the longest. So this file that we're dealing with right now in Final Cut Pro is about 4.5 minutes. So that's basically what I'd be looking for. I'd be looking for any file that's about 4.5 minutes and above. So you know what? Real quick, I'm going to mute this. Right? Actually, you know what? Let me just do it like this. Okay, taking off the audio so that we can hear this music. And you can see the file that I picked is only 3 minutes and 19 seconds. So I would go up in file size, select 3 minutes and 31 seconds. Getting close to the 4 minutes. 4 minutes, 14 seconds. Oh, as you can see, I need to get some larger files, but depending on the size is how I would select it. Once I find it, let me see. See, that seemed like cool enough. 9 megabytes. Take the file, and now I've added the audio music to the edit. So let me close these folders out. Okay, that's in there. Boop. It is miscategorized. So if you can learn this a little bit more within Final Cut Pro, all of these tracks should be, you know, like organized so that they're actually placed correctly. So what I'm gonna do is, knowing that this is music, it came in as an audio file because it's a wave, I am going to change the role, the audio role, to music, and then it's gonna become green, so it kind of knows its place in the hierarchy of Final Cut Pro. So now also gives you another visual cue, allowing you to see it better. And now I'm gonna hit everything to fit in the screen. So now, looking at it top to bottom, basically you have your A roll, your B roll footage, zoom in out transitions, lower thirds, the sound effects to match all of your like visual effects. And then the last thing is the music, and as you can see, the music is all in the red. If I were to press play right now, this would blast all of your speakers because it's way too high, because it is giving you the output leveled for a radio mix. We're using it as a music bed. So right off the bat, we're just going to grab it and we can slide this down. Now, here's another pro tip when it comes to Final Cut Pro. If you can see, the numbers of the decibels are jumping really fast, really fast. So if I want to get to a particular decibel level, like negative 28 dB, which I nailed, sometimes this could be a little difficult depending on your mouse. A way to get granular control is by simply hitting the command key on your keyboard, holding that down while you press this down, and as no matter how hard or soft you go on your mouse, you will literally only increase or decrease the decibels by 1. So I want to get this to negative 28. And now we would select this audio and we would highlight it or enable it once again. And then we would, once we're at this point, I would give it a listen to see what the music, sound effects, and visual effects all look like together.
Welcome to Ecamm from scratch. In the first video, we went over downloading.
See, that aspect right there would be just as good. Now, one thing to note, I will also be adding a outward transition sound effect to every transition. So the same way that we added
to your computer, and
to
in
go
this
in, I would be adding a sound effect on the transition out. So that is pretty much it. Once you are happy with all of these steps, then that's when you're done with your edit and you should be able to render it out and apply it to whichever use case that you are going to use it. If it's LinkedIn, you're pretty much done. If you're going on YouTube, if you're going to be adding end screens, anything like that, that's something that you would be adding. I'm going to show you that as well. That's going to be the final aspect. But one thing that I did want to notice or show you was the way that you can fade in or fade out the music easily with Final Cut Pro. So right here at the beginning, the music starts.
Welcome to Ecamm from scratch. In the first video,
but let's say you thought that was actually still too harsh, even though this song with the bass line just sneaks up on you, it sounds really good. But as you're able to adjust the audio right there through, your decibels right there through this line, right here, it's a little hard to see, but there's just like, it's almost like a shield with an exclamation mark, right? And my mouse actually changes once you hover right over it. And once you have that change in, you see it says fade audio in, because that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to select it, and once you have it selected and you have it clicked down, you're able to just drag that into your file as short or as long as you desire. And what that's doing is effectively fading in the music in that aspect. So the volume will increase up to, and will not get up to the decibel level that we set, 28 decibels, until this point in the timeline. So we'll hear what that sounds like.
Welcome to Ecamm from scratch. In the first video, we went over downloading and installing Ecamm to your computer, and in
much smoother transition. This can also be done in different styles. So the same way where you would actually select it, right, to adjust the length of that fade in and out, you can right click when you're on there and you have these options of the different types of curves that you can use right on it. So S curves usually also work pretty well because they're really coming in from the bottom and just kind of like ramping up very slowly.
Welcome to Ecamm from scratch. In the first video, we went over downloading and installing Ecamm to your computer.
I just sneezed, so Excuse me. Yep. Okay. So that's a way that you can fade in and out the music. I'm going to mention now, if you guys have any questions, please put a Q in front of it and drop them in there now. The time is advancing, and I'm just going to show you kind of like the end scene aspect and what I would do with it, because the fade in and out transition and the way that we separate our audio tracks is all part of this as well. So let me get to that. Okay, the timeline, I shrunk it down to the size once again. Let me go ahead and try to see if we can fit all of it into it. Okay, so yeah, it's nice and squozed in there. But we can see from top to bottom audio and everything like so. Okay, now I'm going to be looking for another file, which is my end screen. So I already have a little video clip that is my end screen. It's already timed. It has the music set up, and I'm going to show you how I use it to just simply just throw it onto any video and finish it off in the same manner. Is it here? Yep. Is that? Let me make sure. Yep. Okay, so you see end screen, and yep, I misspelled that. End screen, ENS. Boom, just dropped it in there. So now it's rendered, and now that's the way that my video finishes. But the link, and I'll see you there. So the way that I have it set up to actually duck the audio already in there. So what I would do in this instance, let me try to, okay, yeah. Right here, this is the end screen that I just dropped, the file with the audio. But I kind of want the audio to duck in underneath and start before, kind of like an L cut, right? So I want to L cut my audio in this file, and I have it set up that way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to detach my audio from it. Okay. And one thing that I want to show you is, I don't know if you could really see that. There's a link, right? There's a little like link from the audio file that we just detached to the file above it, right? That is the position of that link. Hold on, let me reverse that. I should be able to hit Option Command, right? Okay, yeah, I was right. Option Command click, right? And once I do the Option Command click, it moved the position of that little link to wherever I have my playhead. The reason why is because, let me reverse it, right? If I'm here and I start using this to clip in, usually it doesn't do that. Usually what it does is that because that's weird, but usually what it does is that it starts moving your audio with what you're cutting. So to prevent that, even though it's doing it correctly, you would have selected, you would hit Command Option and then select it to make this in the middle, allowing you to adjust this in as much or as little as you want, with it being the link here and it never pushing the audio so that the audio doesn't lose sync. I mentioned this because it's important, especially with the sync in the lips with your audio, because if you were to not be aware of this little linkage, you could easily just move or shift a file, and then every audio file for the rest of the edit behind it can just be pushed off out of sync just that little bit, which will then start making you get gray hair prematurely. But basically that's the aspect that I have there. Like, I have the end screen, so when I finish, it starts, right? One thing that I'm going to do is I should be able to do it there. Yep. I have my shortcut set as cross dissolve. Okay, so instead of having to go into the transitions aspect and everything like that, You saw how easily I just put my cursor over it and I got the same transition that I use all the time, which is cross dissolve. So at the end of the video is going to cross dissolve, but I also think that that's too fat. So I'm going to make it as thin as possible so that it's a quick cross dissolve. But as you can see, as I'm talking, the music already started. Yeah, actually, right around there. And now when
The
we hit
link and
play,
I'll see you there.
okay, that would be the end screen. But I still think that the hit and the snare is just a little bit like too loud, and that's when we would once again go ahead and use this little, like the little shield, and we're gonna fade in and make sure that that fade, actually it's not a good illustration of it because I have it so squozed. Okay, there we go. I got the message, Kevin. Thanks a lot, and thanks for hanging out. Okay, so right there, that we're gonna fade in the audio, but the same thing, like I said, I prefer the S curve, especially here, because I want to keep it as low as possible. And you can see where it starts climbing here is where my voice is already ducking there. So as it's fading out is when we're gonna start hearing the rise of the music that I have, and then it's just gonna fall in sync with my end screen, and that's pretty much it. And that's how you can simply add an end screen to any of your videos. And
Click the link and I'll see you there.
See how the audio faded in there perfectly. And then you can see the audio is already built to fade out. So I don't have to do any other transition. But if you wanted it to fade out at that same exact time, you would do the transition from the other side. And it would just fade to like nothingness in the audio. And once you have, like I said, your A-roll, your leveled audio, your B-roll, your transitions, your lower thirds, your sound effects to match all of your visual effects, sound bed, end screen, that was pretty much the entire process. And that's not even mentioning the steps that we took with Descript. But this would be what I would then consider a final product. Once this is done here is when I would go simply to the the share menu here and then click Apple devices 4K, and whenever I do the 4K, it's blazing fast. It does an M4V file, and another benefit of that is that YouTube uploads those files a lot faster than they do MOV files. So note that as well. Well, that's pretty much it when it comes to the edit here. We can export it, but this obviously is a demonstration and this file is nowhere near completed. That B-roll doesn't even match what I'm talking about. But that is how, are the steps and the procedures that I would take to complete an edit. As you can see, most people won't even notice this when it comes to my edits, right? But I do take all of this extra, all these extra steps because this is the way that I like to edit my videos. Because one thing that I've noticed that, it's just hard to say. That's all I gotta say. To each his own, right? When it comes to how much or how much or how little they want to apply to their edits. This is what I geek out on. This is what I have fun with. So I'm always looking to just get that little bit extra, that little extra step. And one of the other things that you guys let me know if you want to know, if it interests you, is how I do my shortcuts, because this took so much longer in the demonstration aspect because just my mouse, my mouse itself has so many shortcuts already pre-programmed as soon as I hit Final Cut Pro. There's a button just underneath here that I have my transition already applied to it. So as I'm scrolling and I go, I want to apply a cross dissolve right here, I just put my cursor and click one button on my mouse. The button right on top here, right, this one that actually were to change the way that your scroll wheel functions, I removed that completely and I put one of those like ripple deletes onto it. So as I'm just scrolling, I'm able to just hit cut, and as soon as I put my playhead, I click that button on the mouse, kind of like my middle click button, and that middle click button does a lot of that editing as well. He gets louder every day. And so yeah, so there's a lot of shortcuts like that in combination with my Stream Deck. I go through a lot of these edits a lot faster. So using the Descript, every aspect, and these shortcuts, like shortcuts is life when it comes to this aspect. You're able to really take all of these steps, even though they're a lot, and maximize them and make them as fast as possible. So hopefully you guys got use out of this tutorial. But now I'm going to switch scenes. Let me go ahead, and I got to... Yep. Okay, let's bring in some music again, because I left that off. And now we're going to hit this scene. Boom. And then the next thing we're going to do is hit that and go. Channels that I think you should go and watch. Cities Gaw. We couldn't leave without some Cities Gaw today. And today, let me see if I can pull it up. Boom. Oh, hit the wrong application. We're back in Final Cut. It's not where we needed to be. Let me just cut Final Cut Pro. We're gonna quit it. And there we go. Boom. Let me see if I can move myself, because now I'm kind of in the way. There we go. And this week we're talking about Surge M. Keeping it all in the same mix as far as editing goes and editors. He's another amazing Final Cut Pro editor. He does, photography, film, and he teaches you a lot of different things to level up. But if you can just quickly see his videos, he really spends a lot of time as a Final Cut Pro editor. He's another one that can give you a variety of tips and tricks. He comes out with videos weekly, and it's part of like my weekly routine to learn something and the most that I can from so many individuals. Okay, and that's Cities Gaw. So if you haven't checked him out, I highly recommend that you do. Surge M. He's just got so much great information. I can't emphasize enough how much I've learned from this man. He's got short videos, and kind of the ones that I like, that's just like, here's a tip, this is what it does, and it just blows your mind. He's really good, and like I said, he's put in the work, he's put in the hours with this program, and he's someone that I highly recommend. So if you haven't so already, definitely go check out Surge M. Channels that I think you should go and watch. And keeping it all in the editing theme, I've referenced Dylan John Dillershaw. Then we also have Dylan, the Final Cut Bro. Those two Dylans really mesh my brain, especially because they both edit Final Cut and they're both named Dylan. But we also have, oh my god. Anyways, as you can tell, I'm fading right now, so I'm gonna call that as it is. But so many people, if you're interested in finding the entire list of Cities Gaw, that can be found in the Discord, and there's a special little section there that says Cities Gaw, and it has everyone listed. The other ones that I was trying to mention, Raphael Ludwig, also another one, Tom Buck, also learned a lot from. I don't think he's actually done a Final Cut Pro one. He's mentioned it. He's got some tips and tricks, so I know you can find it, but he's not mostly dedicated to that. But there's quite a few who are, and a lot of good information. So, Dylan Bates, thank you, sir. I appreciate you. All right. All right, and that's it, guys. That is it. We have completed episode number 84. We level up. Give me 1 second. Because I got Aiden. You know what? I'm just going to close it out. I have to go be a father. Aiden just, I don't know if you can hear, just got into my tools. So he just opened up my toolbox and he's going in, getting into some sharp things that he's not supposed to be dealing with. So I got to go be a father. But everyone, as always, thank you for hanging out with me. As always, thank you for taking the time and spending it here, your most valued possession, which is your time, and hanging out here with me. I hope that I was able to bring value in showing you some of my methods of how I use Final Cut Pro and how I finalize and edit my videos. So as always, I'm trying to bring as much value as possible, but I have to emphasize that I can't thank you enough for taking the time. You guys are amazing. I can't wait for next week, because next week is going to be episode number 85, and we're going to be doing it all over again, 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on the East Coast. So mark it down on your calendars. And I hope you have an amazing week. I expect nothing but that. And I can't wait to do it all over again. What we're going to be talking about next week, I'm not sure. But we'll figure it out. And I can't wait to figure it out with you. So until then, have a great and safe week. Take care of yourselves. And I will see you next time.